All right, can someone explain to me why this book was $45? Like, I don't know about that, but... Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. Before I get started, I have been told that as a real YouTuber, you should ask people to subscribe and all of those shenanigans at the beginning of the video rather than the end, in case people don't watch the whole thing. I'm sure none of you guys are like that, but just in case, please subscribe to my channel and please like this video and drop a comment if you think any of what I'm saying today is interesting. So without further ado, let's get into today's video. And as you can tell from the title, today I am going to be reviewing none other than Barack Obama's A Promised Land. Now, this thing is big, 700 pages. To be exact, actually a little more than 700 pages. So I kind of had to blaze through this book to do this review, so please drop this video a like. Anyway, so this is a much awaited book by former President of the United States, Barack Obama. It looks great next to Becoming on my shelf. I think a lot of people are really looking forward to this, and it's sold like millions of copies, so obviously people are really diving into this. We're really looking forward to hearing what President Obama had to say, especially now that it's been 4 years of the Trump presidency, 4 years after he's left office. So a lot of people are really curious what his thoughts on everything that have transpired have been and kind of what he has to say about his presidency. So I kind of blazed through this. I got it last weekend and finished it this week. It was definitely a great read. Would highly recommend. I'll just start there. And just to kind of give you a quick overview of what's in the book. So he actually starts in the preface by saying that he didn't want to write a book of more than 500 pages, but as you know, this one's already over 700 pages and it's just a part one. He's going to be writing a second book. And I was like, if you're already selling this for $45 and then like, are you going to sell the next one for also $45? And like, it's kind of a lot of money, but I don't know. I mean, it's full of a lot of really interesting information, so I guess there's that. And I bought my copy from an independent bookstore, so I was, of course, glad to support them, especially throughout the pandemic and everything. So anyway, it's a large tome, and this one actually only goes over the first administration, the first Obama administration. So it kind of starts off, he talks a little bit about his childhood and stuff, and then quickly gets into the campaign as he was running for president and what that was like. And then when he actually became president in 2008, he kind of goes through the biggest events that happened in his first 4 years in office between 2008 and before the 2012 campaign actually begins. So it's written in a really interesting way where he kind of talks about basically everything in chronological order, and once he gets to the part about the presidency, he kind of chronicles the biggest crises as they were happening. So there's a really in-depth discussion about the stimulus in response to the financial crisis, a really in-depth discussion about the Affordable Care Act, about relations with Iran, China, India, Russia, other world powers, and kind of how he had to navigate those things. And it's actually a really interesting look from a perspective that you don't really get to see, because we hear about all these decisions policymakers are making. We see the stuff on the news. We see like the stuff they put in front as public statements and stuff like that. But you never really get to see what is in the president's mind or what these policymakers are saying behind closed doors. So that part of it was really interesting. Now, I will say that for me personally, I was in 6th grade when Obama was first elected president, and I obviously didn't have a great sense of policies or politics even, or really what was happening at a federal policy level at all when I was 11 years old, like most 11-year-olds do. I remember that like the night he was ushered in as president, it was just such a magical night for so many people, because it kind of gave, just people hope. And that's kind of what he campaigned on, was a sense of hope and a sense of change, that he was going to usher in a new era of American politics, that things were going to change, that people who were suffering were not going to have to suffer anymore, that this was just going to be the dawn of a new part of American history. And so I remember that, and I remember kind of seeing the looks on my parents' faces when they saw like this person of color is becoming president, and they looked at me and my sister and were like, wow, like you guys could also have aspirations like this. Like there are opportunities in this country for you to even achieve the highest office in the land. So I remember like that sense of hope that everyone had. And over the 8 years that he was in president was basically when I came of age, when I started to think more critically about issues like policy, in a number of different realms. For me personally, I studied public health in college, so thinking about the Affordable Care Act and stuff was, a central tenet of my studies in school. So healthcare was something I thought more about than other fields of policy, but obviously I started to think more about civics and government and stuff like that. And I think, when you get to 2016, obviously the biggest thing on everyone's mind is like, how did President Trump get elected? But the other big thing on your mind is thinking back on the Obama presidency, you start to realize like there was so much hope and change that everyone was talking about in 2008. And in 2016, not actually that much changed about the status quo of American politics. And A Promised Land kind of feels like Obama's mea culpa of sorts, where he's admitting that, he didn't meet the expectations of a lot of progressive liberals who were the reason he got voted into office. And he kind of says it like, I know I didn't meet your expectations. I didn't meet my own expectations. I'm an idealist at heart. And then kind of gives a justification walking through the minutia of all of the different events that were happening during his presidency as to why he was not able to deliver on all those, as Sarah Palin would say, hopey, changey things that he had said he would do. And I think he kind of definitely posits himself as someone who came into politics with a pie-in-the-sky mentality, thought he could bring about a lot of change, and then got kind of bogged down by the reality of Washington, and talks about the relationships that he had to navigate with Republicans, with even other Democratic leaders, with leaders from around the world in different countries, and just all of the different facets that go into making policy and all of the compromises you have to make. That lead you to make decisions that maybe weren't the ones that you were hoping you could make at the start. So I think that was, definitely a perspective that I think was helpful to understand, because I, like many other people my age, definitely thought a lot of things were going to change during the Obama presidency that didn't end up changing. And I know in my public health classes, we talk a lot about like, why wouldn't people want universal health care? Why wouldn't people want something like Medicare for all? Why did the Obama administration settle for all of the things that they settled for when coming up with the Affordable Care Act? And I think hearing the other side, like hearing his justification of why those things had to happen, was really interesting. It was also interesting to me that the book is definitely catered towards people who are pretty liberal in their thought process, who had all these high expectations of him bringing about all these progressive changes. It's not really targeted towards anyone who disagrees with his fundamental values. So, even the way he talks about climate change in the book, for example, is like, obviously climate change is a problem. If you are an ultra-conservative, you may not believe that. And he doesn't spend any time trying to convince the reader of his own value system. So it's not really targeted towards changing the minds of Republicans or changing the minds of conservatives in any way. It's sort of giving progressives more justification for why he kind of had to compromise on a lot of things he had to compromise on. So I thought that was an interesting perspective to bring to the table, and one that I appreciated kind of hearing his thought process about. I feel, after having read this book, that he does take responsibility for these things. He doesn't shirk that responsibility. And I actually kind of feel like, he definitely hasn't exonerated himself from like promising a lot of things and then not actually delivering fully on those promises. I think that we do still need to hold all of our politicians accountable, no matter how charismatic they are or how well they explain themselves. And obviously, maybe not obviously, but from my perspective, and yeah, I'm reviewing Obama's book, so obviously this is a very political video, so I don't know if you have issues with it, like, I'm sorry, but obviously to me, we ended up with something much worse after Obama left, but that doesn't mean we can just excuse the things that Obama and his administration did compromise on and did not, and where they failed to meet the expectations of people around them. And we should still be holding government accountable. And I think it actually sets the stage really nicely for as you start reflecting on, you know, like, how do we engage with government again now that this whole Trump situation is like over and Joe Biden's going to become president, who is pretty much a continuation of Obama era politics. He was instrumental in the Obama administration, engineered many of the policies that became law during that time, and now he's going to be our president, and he's going to bring in people who advocate in policies that he believes in. And so how do we kind of go back to a situation where we are able to hold government accountable and like not just being happy that it's not Trump, but thinking about government in a way where, yeah, there's going to be compromises that have to be made, but we do have to stay true to these ideals and remember who was the reason that you got elected to office for. So I think it's like an interesting book to be reading right before a new president takes office, and kind of sets the stage for, okay, like, I understand that there's all these compromises that have to be made, but that doesn't mean I'm going to just be silent and be just thankful that it's not Trump anymore. So I thought that that was kind of a good catalyst for reflection when it comes to my future behavior as it relates to a Biden administration, living in the US under a Biden administration. The other piece that I just want to talk about was the tone of the book is really nicely done. It kind of just feels like your friend is telling you about his life story. He writes in a very accessible way. For those of you who have read Dreams of My Father or The Audacity of Hope, you probably know that already. I actually have not read either of his books. I'm about to start Dreams of My Father via audiobook, so that'll be interesting. But it wasn't surprising to me because I'd read Becoming by Michelle Obama, and it's the same kind of tone where it just feels like you're sitting down like over a beer, over coffee with a friend, and just like chatting with them about their life. And so he has a very accessible way of explaining like the history that led to a certain thing that was happening during his presidency, and then talking about his decision-making process, how he factored in the thoughts of advisors and other people, and how he engaged with voters and just the American public while making those decisions, and what just like all the things on his mind were that helped him come to the conclusions that he came to, and then kind of what the aftermath of those things were. So it definitely feels like a very conversational book. So even though it is 700 plus pages long, it's not that hard to get through the whole thing fairly quickly, because it's a fairly simple and easy read. And one point that I'd elaborate on in what I just said was he explains history really well. Obviously, there is a liberal tilt to all the history that's being explained, and there is an American tilt to all the history that's being explained. I think he does, a fair job, and, he talks about like Iran's history and how America has definitely a role to play in why Iran is kind of the mess that it's in today, or in much of the Middle East, actually. And he does acknowledge like these were things that America did that were wrong, that really screwed up this part of the world and created this situation that we have today in a lot of ways. So I did appreciate the way that he talks about that, but there are definitely, you do have to keep in mind that this is a former American president writing this book, so he's definitely not going to hold America as accountable as they probably should be when thinking about a lot of these world events. But I did think he does a nice job of just kind of talking about the history of why situations are the way they are, and then using that to segue into justification for why he felt the solutions that he advocated for were the best way to address some of these big problems. So anyway, that was today's review of A Promised Land by Barack Obama. I am sorry I didn't hold this book up the whole time because it's really heavy, so yeah, there's that. But I mean, I would say obviously the pandemic continues to go on. A lot of independent bookstores are struggling. Amazon is not struggling. Jeff Bezos has made a ton of money during COVID-19. So if you're interested in buying this book, I would highly recommend doing so from an independent bookstore. I have a few recommendations down below of my favorite bookstores, so if you happen to live in any of these random cities that I've listed bookstores in, you should definitely check one of them out. But I think overall this is a great book, and if you're someone who looked at the Obama presidency and was not satisfied with the outcome of it, but still look up to Obama as an individual, then I think this would be a great read for you. But yeah, those are my thoughts on A Promised Land by Barack Obama. Definitely let me know if you have any thoughts on what I had to say in the comments below. Leave this video a like if you liked it, and don't forget to subscribe. Like I said in my last video, I'm going to be uploading a lot more often from now on, so I hope you continue coming back and watching more and more videos on my channel. And anyway, that's about it. That's all I have for today, so I will see you next time. Have a good one, and bye-bye!